Okay, so South American World Cup qualifying football continuing earlier today. Bolivia defeating Peru by 2-0. Brazil and Argentina will both be in action, with the Brazilians taking on Colombia, while Argentina battle in a top-of-the-table clash with Uruguay. Now joining us to preview the matches, South American football correspondent Juan G. Arango. Juan, welcome to the SportsMax Zone. Can we start with... yeah, great to have you on, brother. Can we start with Brazil's trip to Colombia, who are yet to be defeated in these qualifiers?
Yet to be defeated, but yet to win a lot of games. That's the big problem with Colombia, and yet to score a lot of goals. And when you look at their lineup, you'd think that there would be a lot of goals being scored, which hasn't been the case. But also when we talk about football, we also talk about mental aspects. And right now, maybe Colombia edges out very slightly against Brazil, who find themselves in a bit of a downturn, because Brazil, first of all, getting a draw at home against Venezuela and then losing the way they lost to Uruguay in Uruguay ends up being a big factor for them. And based on the lineup that you see, a lot of changes that were made in the starting 11. For starters, you have Emerson Royal coming back into the starting lineup. Also, Renan Lodi getting the start over at left back for Fernando Diniz. Also, Andre from Fluminense, who ended up being basically the man of the match in the Copa Libertadores final just a couple of days ago. He ends up coming in. Of course, that's good news for Liverpool fans to start looking at one of their future acquisitions. And Gabriel Martinelli will be getting the start up top. Of course, no Neymar, as he's out until basically after Copa America. We'll see what ends up happening with him.
Yeah, Nestor Lorenzo, the Colombian coach, hasn't lost a game since he took over 20 months ago. Is there something to be said about him and the impact he may have on this assignment?
Well, yes. It's interesting that you mentioned that, because during the preparation phase to this World Cup qualifying, he did not lose. He had some important wins, but it's been during World Cup qualifiers where there also ends up being an offensive mental block, if you will, for Colombia, a team that has struggled to find their way into finding goals. And we saw it against Ecuador, that they could have been able to win in Quito. They could have gotten 3 very valuable points away from home, because they ended up squandering them against Uruguay just a couple of days before that. So looking at the way they started, it seemed very promising. But again, the goal-scoring contributions have been very few and very limited. Knowing the players that they have at their disposal, you look at 2, 3, 4 deep in the offensive end, you end up wanting and expecting more out of this Colombian national team.
Yeah, and the Brazilians have never traditionally struggled in these CONMEBOL World Cup qualifiers, because they are a world powerhouse for sure. But their current form and looking forward for them without Neymar, does that paint a worrying picture for the Brazilian fans?
Well, whenever you're missing a player with his qualities, barring his extracurriculars, barring his theatrics with many really have not been too fond of, even in Brazil. There's many in Brazil that aren't too fond of Neymar to begin with. Yeah. You know that this has to be more of a collective side. And to see players like Andre all of a sudden getting a chance, to start to see a Brazil that didn't have a right back of note for the first time in nearly 50 years, it ends up being worrying. Same thing over at left back. So you start bringing in maybe not some old reliables, but players that maybe are, hey, this is what we have at this point and at this stage. And then not only that, many are waiting to see in the wings Endrick emerge. And maybe this is one of those moments where you're going to see a player of his ilk, 16, 17, 18 years of age, come in and really start to offer the flair, offer the control, and maybe offer something that Brazil have been lacking in terms of a dynamic player, which is discipline.
Yeah, all right. Well, that game will be live on SportsMax, 8 o'clock Eastern Caribbean time tonight, 7 o'clock in Jamaica. Argentina will be up against Uruguay, top of the table clash there. How is that one looking? Pretty attractive, I think.
I mean, that's just take out your popcorn, start moving, just getting ready and warming up and sitting down. Unfortunately, it's going to be played almost simultaneously at the same time as Colombia-Brazil. So, I mean, as far as CONMEBOL and their scheduling, well, coach me up on that one. As far as Argentina's concerned, look, we can't stop talking about the attractive way that they play football, what they've been able to do. Many have said, well, Messi slowed down a notch or two ever since he went to MLS. Well, if he slows down, God, I wish I could slow down like that. But to be honest with you, the biggest doubt or the biggest doubts for Lionel Scaloni were if Nico Gonzalez was going to play or is it Angel Di Maria. Well, it ends up being the man from Fiorentina that gets the nod. Up top, is it Lautaro Martinez or is it Julian Alvarez? It ends up being the Man City guy. So you end up looking at, from that perspective, how deep this, and even to add more to that, Herman Cano, who was the leading goal scorer in Brazilian football, played for Fluminense, wins the Copa Libertadores. Many are asking for him too. So you're basically 4 deep at forward when you start looking at the Argentine national team. So you look at it and it's just all these pieces being able to fall together. And every time someone is asked to do something, they're able to step in and do a very productive job in the process against the Uruguay team. That's going to be their first litmus test since they played France.
Yeah, I was about to ask you about their quality at the moment because I did say it's a top of the table clash, but based on the live standings at the moment, because Venezuela are actually playing at the moment and have moved slightly ahead just temporarily, well, provisional, given the result of that Venezuela game and what happens with the Uruguay game tonight. But just as we speak, Uruguay are actually third in the table behind the Argentinians, who have been 4-0 so far in this series. So how good, Juan, is this Uruguay team, and can they test Argentina tonight?
Can they? Yes. Now, if you're asking me that they're going to win, that's a different story, because this is a team compared to Argentina who's already defined, who's already understood for the past 3.5, 4 years what their not only the expectations individually and collectively, but understanding what they have to play and how they have to execute that game plan against a Uruguay team who just got a coach that recently came on board, who's still, kind of teaching them the ropes, who's still trying to implement a system that is totally different. If you go back and start looking at Uruguay teams in the recent past, it's teams that would battle, the teams that would confront you in the middle of the pitch. Now you start to see a team that faces you and confronts you higher up in the pitch. You start to see a Uruguay side that wants to play out of the back a bit more and keep the ball on the ground and be able to use the individual and collective talents that this team does have at their disposal. Before, you had a team that would want and send the ball as deep as possible to Luis Suarez or Edinson Cavani and hope to be able to win the second ball and really create off of that. So you end up seeing big differences in the style of Uruguay and how things are changing from a generational and from a football standpoint that ends up making this match so compelling, so interesting, and also a bit of a chess match, if you will, between two grand wizards, if you will, at a certain age and a certain time in football.
Yeah, and the fact is, although the Argentines have been, flawless so far in this series, their squad tonight is boosted by the return of Di Maria and Dybala, who missed the October matches. So on paper, Argentina are favorites, yes, but look even stronger now than they did last month.
And I'm glad you mentioned that, because I only mentioned up top as far as the forwards, but attacking wide. Oh, well, you have Dybala also. Oh, he comes off the bench. You have Di Maria coming off the bench possibly. So, I mean, that, and of course, extra incentive too for Argentina. This most likely will be Angel Di Maria's last match at home with Argentina. Keep in mind, he already announced that he's an international retirement after Copa America. And this match basically will be the last time that he's playing in front of an Argentine crowd in Argentina. So it ends up having a bit more of an emotional connection. It ends up being one of those matches where you most likely will see him, and you'll probably, hopefully, we end up seeing one of the best versions of Angel Di Maria tonight.
Yeah, and the fact is, the fans would embrace the possible milestone appearance for Di Maria, but of course they always welcome back the little master Lionel Messi, who is, we think, probably nearing retirement or international retirement at some point soon. And for a home fixture tonight, I guess the fans will embrace Lionel Messi as well.
Well, look, I mean, as far as time, I'll have to say that, because it could be next year, it could be in 3 years' time. We don't know. I mean, that's basically the answer that we all have to come up with, because, I mean, I remember in Qatar, we had a chance to be able to be part of the group that interviewed Leo Messi, and he said, "Well, no, I think we're done. I think I'm done after the World Cup." And everybody said, "Yeah, he's done. He's done after the World Cup." They said, "No, I want to come back." Yeah. So but at the end of the day, It's been a weird relationship with Di Maria and the Argentine fans. I mean, Messi, we can probably delve into that a little bit later when he starts getting closer to that time where he's going to exit. But his relationship, too, has been very strange because he's also been one of those players that has constantly left and wanted to come back and left and wanted to return and would return, but then wanted to leave again. So he had that very love-hate relationship with Argentine fans and the Argentine media as well.
Yeah. Okay, Juan, we're going to leave it there. Exciting action coming up later on SportsMax. As we said, Brazil will be up against Colombia, and we have that live. We'll talk to you again soon, Juan, I'm sure.
All right, take care. All right, have a good one.
Yeah, and just a comment there about who will retire and when they retire. I've said on the show many times before we go to the break, Moran, Ricardo, that I don't like to call retirement on players. I remember going to the 96 Olympics when Merlinotti announced it would be her last Olympics. Well, lo and behold, she went to 2000 and then 2004 as well. That's a whole 8 years after she said 96 would have been her last. So these sports stars decide when they're ready to quit.
And they're allowed to.
Yeah,
so
no
they
problem.
can change their mind.
Yeah, no problem. I don't have a difficulty with that. Back with more after this.